Hello and welcome back to another episode of FAQ. I'm here with, well, I shouldn't say guests anymore. I should just say co-hosts now, Mom and Dad.
G'day.
And my brother Ben as a guest this time.
Damn it, still a guest.
Maybe if you're on, every episode.
Oh, I live a busy life.
No, you don't. All right, and this week we're talking about how much green is there in green energy, and green meaning both, ecological and money-wise. So one thing that we all watched separately throughout the week was a documentary by someone called Michael Moore. Love him, hate him, have your own opinion on him, whatever. But it raised some interesting points in there that I think we should talk about. So first of all, I guess open to anyone, since you guys have more of an opinion on him. Who the fuck is Michael Moore?
Michael Moore is a Hollywood guy, more known as a documentary filmmaker. He's extremely far left in his political view, like pretty much everyone in Hollywood. Anyway, he was the guy that after the Columbine school shooting in Colorado came out with the film Bowling for Columbine. He then made the documentary after the 9/11 disaster, terrorist attack, Fahrenheit 9/11, where he bashed the Bush administration pretty heavily for failures and said it was a government conspiracy and a whole bunch of other leftist stuff. Anyway, so he's known to be a very big liberal, very left in his political views, and very outspoken. He was a very big critic of President Trump. Conspiracy theorists from the left side of things.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
that is who he is.
Sounds like he just goes from crisis to crisis and makes a film about it.
Yes,
He
pretty much.
knows how to capitalize on things that will get the clicks.
Yeah, but the left is so anti-money, yet he wants to make it all off the disasters.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's who he is. Love him, hate him, as you said. He's kind of one of those guys. I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that, like President Trump, you either love him or you hate him. There is really no middle ground with Michael Moore.
Right.
Kind of like a phase. You either love us or hate us.
That's fair. All right. So this documentary that we watched, it was called Planet of the Humans, if I remember correctly. And it raises concerns about how renewable the green or renewable energy actually is, how much money is actually in it, and where the money comes from and goes. And with Michael Moore being a leftist, he's actually bringing up points that go against a lot of what the left's talking points are, which I thought was interesting. Ben, what did you think about the documentary?
I thought it was a very interesting documentary on climate change, and my initial reaction to it before I started watching was like, oh, this is made by Michael Moore. It's going to be some very left-leaning documentary that just espouses the virtues of green energy and doesn't really get into any of the controversial things behind it. But I was actually surprised that it was not that. Right. And it did actually raise some good points about, for example, electric cars. So you have, your electric cars, but where do your electric cars get their power? And they get their power from your home when you get home with it and plug it in to your house. And your house is still on the grid. And that grid is run by coal, among other things.
Yeah.
So in the end, how green is that electric car that has been touted as one of the saviors of the climate by reducing emissions and protecting the ozone layer? Meanwhile, you're charging that thing from a coal plant that's belching out
disgusting amounts of
just
CO2.
disgusting amounts, metric tons of pollutants into the atmosphere. So it was interesting to see that they had actually covered that aspect of at least that one part, for example, rather than just saying, electric cars are the second coming of Christ for the environment.
Now we all know that was the election of President Trump.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No political stuff.
We can't talk about this without being a little bit political.
Right.
Realize how many fingers are on how many pies politically with this stuff?
I thought it was very interesting that he actually exposed these different green or environmental groups, and how they may have started out to be good, but then how they have been corrupted over time, and that money was now the god. Like one of the ones he talked about was the Sierra Club, and showing their books, basically follow the money. It's not what you think it is anymore.
Well, money is the root of all evil, as we know.
The love of money is the root of all evil. Oh, it's right.
Sorry. But quick question for everyone. Before watching this documentary, what was your opinions of green or renewable energy or electric vehicles? And then did they change any after watching this documentary?
Personally, me, my parents, when I was growing up in Australia, they built their own home. And that was back when I was 12. So that goes back, a few years ago. And one of the things they did when they built their home is they put solar hot water on their house, which at the time was groundbreaking. It was
ahead
still
of their time.
Yeah, they were ahead of their time. It was one of the new technologies coming out, and I have to say, it was a family of 5 kids, and we were out on a property, but it worked well. I mean, provided that you monitored shower times and everything else, that there was enough hot water for the family to have hot water all the time. It was on an electric backup, so yes, when we didn't have sun, you click the button on and hit the power grid for electricity to heat the hot water. But most of the time in Australia, you had enough sun to provide hot water.
Yeah, but
I've been accustomed to that kind of stuff pretty much my whole life. But the question I've always had is, how good is it really?
Right.
Particularly like when they started making these wind generators, these big wind farms, and when they started down the track of, we're going to have solar power on every house, and we're going to resupply the grid with solar. Because I know from growing up, solar panels don't last forever.
No, not at all, right? And it's what's the word I'm looking for? Not dumb. It's not well thought out to have solar panels on every single home, because they're not going to be in a good position for it.
Right, and it's just it's not feasible, and it costs a lot, both monetarily wise and environmentally wise, to make solar panels. They're actually not that great. But did my opinion change on renewable energy after watching the documentary? I think what changed was my opinion of the people behind renewable energy.
Right. Yeah, and I think for me that's what changed the most. For me, not so much like the solar panel or the technology behind it, but just like who's behind it and like where the money's at. Yeah. That was all very shady.
Yes. Yeah. It was very interesting documentary just to figure out that they're using that entire industry to make billions of dollars, again, off the regular taxpayer. And it's always the little guy that's going to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be the one footing the bill. We're going to be the one feeling the effects of it. I mean, the ones making money, they're not going to care. They're always going to have, be comfortable, I guess.
Right.
No, it's kind of interesting. I was just looking up the other day, and I just confirmed it now, but Denmark, they're one of the leading countries as far as, renewable energies go, because they've got those, massive like offshore, like wind farms, that sort of stuff. But they just started a project that's like $34 billion, and it's going to be a giant, pretty much island off the coast for renewable energy. So they're putting a massive, I guess, deposit down in terms of, renewable energy and that sort of stuff. And, if it works for them, good for them. And then, of course, we'll have people like on the left be like, oh, why can't we do that here? But like Denmark's got a lot fewer citizens and, less land, than the U.S. We're trying to, send power from coast to coast,
I think as an individual, you can do things to help limit your carbon footprint and to help with that type of thing. I mean, just some of the things that we do off the top of the head, we ride to work when we can, like we ride our bicycles to work when we can.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes the car out 2 to 3 times a week for me, depending on what my week is like. Dad can pretty much do it 5 days a week. So that takes his car off the road, which in turn also saves us money and wear and tear on the vehicle.
Right.
Great on that. Our heating source, we have central heat and air, but we use that as a backup. So in the winter, we have the wood stove that we use, and that's our main source of heat. We, as you guys know, we don't keep the house very warm in the winter. By U.S. standards, we're freaking having icicles off our nose. I mean, it's 66 and we're comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that's also kind of also comes down to the placement of where that furnace is in the house.
Well,
I don't know if comfortable is the right word to describe 66 degrees.
Shivering, maybe. I don't know.
It's fine. And it's also partly because of the dog. I mean, when you have a Great Pyrenees, they don't like a lot of heat, so we keep it cooler for him in the winter. But, we do that. And so for the firewood, we're not buying it from somebody off the side of the road. We actually go out to the farm and take down use the trees that needs to come down and that kind of stuff. It's a renewable source in that fact that we use that way. We don't always have every light in the house on. I mean, you guys heard it all the time growing up. Are you in there? Turn the light off. Turn the light off.
Yeah.
Close the door. Stop heating or cooling the outside.
Yeah, who's the one paying for the electricity? Not you. Turn the light off.
Stop taking long showers, that type of thing. So I think everybody, by doing their part, will help.
Right.
Do I think it's going to reverse it? No. But after watching the documentary, we were talking and I'm like, there are certain situations where wind and solar do a great job. And one of those is on a boat. If you're on a sailing vessel and that is where you live, having a wind and a solar is great because you have a gas or diesel generator as a backup, but they don't tend to use them as much as what they do for wind and solar. And it's running these, they call them yachts. They're not big, massive yachts or whatever, but these sailing vessels, they're powering everything they need on it with but then again, they're also in an environment where they're getting sun and wind.
Mm-hmm. And for everybody out there who's wondering why suddenly we're talking about boats,
boats again.
That's mom and dad's kind of retirement plan is just to buy a boat and sail around, tropical waters, I assume.
We'll see.
Somewhere nice and warm.
There won't be any Antarctica if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with the right applications, those do work. But there's also a cost to the environment to produce the necessary tools for those.
Right, yeah. As shown in the documentary, you got to do a lot of mining to get the right type of, quartz to get, and coal to get the silica stuff to make the solar panels. So that takes a toll on there.
From the environment.
Yeah. And if I recall correctly from a couple of years ago in college, I was listening to someone talk, and they say that humans today move around more Earth and stuff per year than Mother Nature does, just through like wind and erosion and stuff. Like, and globally, like thinking about it, like that's mind-boggling numbers of like tons and tons and tons of like sand or dirt and mining and ore. It's ridiculous.
Well, just think about building a house, and I'm in the home building industry. Building a house, what natural materials you have to do this. You have to prepare the site that you're on, and depending on where it is, sometimes you have to bring fill dirt in, you have to bring top dirt in, and you have to build up where you're at. So where's that coming from?
Mm.
Somewhere around, you're going to have to scrape that mountaintop off to get it, basically.
Right.
Then you have the sand for that you mix for the mortar on your brick. And then, and that comes in a lot of different ways. It's not just your typical sand from the beach. It's certain sand that's a certain color, certain mortar. And, where are you getting this? How are you getting that sand, that color? Because, you can't just use brown sand for a white mortar. You have to have the right colors.
Can't just use that great Arkansas red clay.
Yeah, about that.
So I guess I've got a question then for Ben and yourself, Josh.
Yeah.
Because you guys are obviously the generations coming on. You've got people that are your mother and I's age that totally deny global warming. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as global warming. So, firstly,
polar bears have entered the chat.
Is there global warming? And if there is, and green energy, after watching this documentary, green energy, renewable energy is not as green and renewable as it appears to be, then what do you guys see coming out of that documentary as a step in the right direction?
And I'll let you go ahead and answer that since we haven't heard from you in a bit.
I don't know. After watching that documentary and just seeing that the majority of how green so-called green energy is produced, you'd have to do something very drastic with the people that fund that and how it's done right now in order to change it to where it is actually green. I still think we're quite a few years off, maybe even decades of really getting technology to where solar or wind or anything like that is actually more, I guess, a consistent and viable option. Because right now with solar and or wind, it's intermittent. So when you don't have sun cover, or not sun cover, when you don't have sunlight or you don't have wind, those energy producing resources, aren't going to produce enough energy for whatever town or whatever you're trying to power. If that happens during a peak time where everybody needs a lot of power, or even at a time where just a substantial amount of people need power and it's just a down day for the sun or something. There's not like the sun's like,
the sun's sick,
not
and
today.
It doesn't want to come out.
Not today, guys. Clouds, you got it. I'm gonna sleep some more. Yeah, so there's. I think we're still quite a ways off of that becoming a more consistent energy producer. And then I think another thing you'd have to do is you need to overhaul how it's done and then who can get involved, because there's always going to be people that want to get in there and capitalize and make money off of it, and those people tend to get to a point where they care more about the money and less about producing what's good for everybody else, and I sound like
Al Gore.
I sound like a friggin' sound like a friggin' socialist right now, or a communist. I don't know more about welfare of the people. But there's certain things like with that stuff that you need to care more about the masses than your own personal gain.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. I would like to see the stigma around nuclear energy go away, and us get back to researching and developing that as a better alternative for energy. The only downside on that is where you put your nuclear waste at the end of the day, for the byproduct of it, because most nuclear materials that you'll use have a long half-life to them. So finding somewhere to store them and store them safely will be a challenge. Ideally, I think we need like a Tony Stark type dude to make an arc reactor, and then we have energy and consistent and unlimited energy that way. But that is many decades away.
Right. And I'll jump in and answer this. But so first of all, to answer your first question, yes, I think global warming, is a thing. It's real. Because yes, the Earth, does fluctuate on temperature. That's why we have ice ages and stuff. But it's not the fluctuation; it's the rate of change of the fluctuation is the important thing. And since Industrial Revolution, really, we've been pumping out these greenhouse gases, and things have been heating up quite a bit, very fast. Compared to the thousands and thousands of years that the Earth goes through. This is couple hundred.
We're preheating the oven and we're all chicken nuggies.
Yep, we're about to get cooked. So what's a step in the right direction if renewables aren't it? Is that the other question that we're?
Well, what are you doing? If renewable energy in that documentary is all it's cracked up to be, how are we going to move forward?
So if the logical end of this is because we're not just going to decrease our global population overnight.
No.
So there's going to be drought, and there's going to be it'll turn into Mad Max Light, kind of like you'll still have governments and stuff, but it'll be like resource wars will be the thing, which I guess are all wars in a way, but these will be like controlling the freshwater supply and
Water world.
Yeah, and the last, arable land kind of stuff. But, a good way to combat that, everybody needs to take accountability for what they use in a day. Really take stock of what they do. Cause you'll meet people, I'm sure you've met them all the time. They're like, oh, save the planet and everything. And they've got, the latest iPhone, the latest, car. Fucking living large, and they're like, oh, don't use plastic straws, they choke the turtles, sort of shit. So for them, it's just kind of like the hashtag that they can put on their Twitter and feel good about it. But I think people need to learn that they can do without, and they can use less in their lives, and it'll still be fine. You don't have to have the latest gadget, the latest thing, and that'll reduce your carbon footprint, and at the same time, oh fuck, look out, you're saving money. How about that? But yeah, I would like to echo what Ben was saying. I would like to see, I guess, more nuclear power. That's one thing that the documentary didn't mention a whole lot, was nuclear power.
Right.
It costs a lot in terms of infrastructure and I guess concrete, just building the building. But once you have it, those power plants are online for decades and decades and decades. As compared to a solar panel that's going to last maybe 1 decade,
right,
before you got to replace it. This nuclear reactor is still going to be pumping out energy for a long time.
Right.
But
I think for me, what the documentary did, in terms of what's a step in the right direction, where should we go? One of the big things they talked about towards the end of that documentary was biofuel, which is basically just ripping down forests and feeding trees into a furnace to drive the energy wheel. which is just
Oh,
not a smart idea.
no, not at all.
So I think for me, what it did for me was reinforce not. And when you say this, people think, oh well, you want to be the Birkenstock wearing dreadlock hippie, person. That's not what I'm saying. But like, one of the things we have to get back to is reforestation.
Yeah.
We have to plant trees whether we like it or not. Trees are an organism that will help with global warming, and we need to plant them rather than carve them down. The other thing that I thought about a lot was we need to really start using things like passive solar design in homes.
We got away from that.
We went away from building homes that were designed to use the sun to heat it and not get so hot in the summer, but stay warm in the winter.
Right.
We need to start looking at things like, and if you haven't ever researched this, folks, I would strongly suggest you research it. Look up rammed earth houses.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, like there's some cool stuff you can do with rammed earth, and it's a renewable product. It lasts forever.
That's right there.
And if you go look at the Middle East, in the old towns of the Middle East, that's what those structures are. They're rammed earth.
Yeah.
So for people like me, I guess, and those of us that don't know, would you explain a little bit more what rammed earth is? I think I have an idea. I want to say it's kind of like the adobo houses that the American Indians made back in the day.
Adobe.
Yeah, that's kind of
Adobe, not adobo. Adobo is what you eat. Do not make your houses out of food.
The chicken and adobo house.
Adobe.
Or
I can't remember.
Peppers and adobo. Yeah.
You know what I meant.
You don't have to worry about mice in the wall with that.
Fuck up. No, roast me over the coals for this.
Yeah. Look, adobe houses is another one that you can look at. That's another passive design that is passive solar design that you can use. But rammed earth is basically you're mixing clay and sand together at a certain ratio and using a hydraulic ram to force that dirt down between a plywood form to create a wall. And basically what you're doing is you're turning that mixture into stone under pressure. And
under pressure.
Yeah. And it will last years. But you can also use that rammed earth or, stone form. It will retain heat. So it gets all the heat from the sun during the day, lets it all go at night. So
so we can be like lizards, fucking just sitting out on the fucking rocks.
Right. Right. But I mean, there's those kind of, like, we need to start looking at how we orient our homes so that we can take advantage of the sun. We need to look at planting trees. There's a bunch of stuff that we can do now. For me, in my opinion, if you're building a home and it's going to be a brand new home, then yeah, maybe you want to look at putting solar on as part of that cost. That's when it becomes a little more viable. Those kind of things.
For sure.
But
I think speaking of building homes, I think the Western world has lost the idea of orienting your homes and different things that our ancestors used to do, because you can't fit as many homes in that subdivision. And so it comes down to the almighty green dollar. You want to fit as many in there as you can to make the money, to make it worthwhile what you're doing. But I think, if you look at the homes in Australia, they have the wide verandas. They have, a lot of the older ones, like your Nan and Pop's house, is single story. Nan and Pop's house is double brick, and it was great. I mean, we're talking, we're out in the Australian bush. You're at, it's hot. It's 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. But you walked into Nan's house, and for as long as I can remember. And while we were there, she had a swamp box and crack a window, and it was comfortable in the house. It was cool. It wasn't, it wasn't like US where it was refrigerated air and you walked in and immediately froze your nads off.
Like your dad.
It was very comfortable. Like your body had time to switch and to adjust to it, but it wasn't like you were just sitting there drenched, sweating. It was oriented the right way. So by not orienting your homes right, you're missing out on it. Like, as I was saying, in Australia, the homes have those verandas. They're situated right, so they block that really hot summer sun, but let the winter sun in to help heat the home. It's things like that we've lost to the almighty dollar.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, particularly in the Western world, want to be comfortable without making their body work for it. So they don't, and that's partly because people don't eat well. And, in office situations, you have those that are not in shape and are, whatever.
You can say
fat.
And in the summer, they want the air really cool because their body can't cool themselves, whereas other people are then freezing and running heaters in that office space, which is ridiculous because then you are really wasting energy at that point. And it's the reverse in the winter. They don't want it that warm, or they want it whatever, and it's just nuts.
All right. Soapbox done.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up was eating habits and how that affects global warming. Mainly, I guess, meat consumption, agriculture, and mainly like the beef industry. That it uses a lot of land, a lot of water, produces a lot of greenhouse gases, either by way of
not cow farts. Just so everyone's clear, that has nothing to do with it.
I mean, they do release a lot of methane or methane.
Not enough to fuck up the environment.
You know how many cows there are in the world, dude? Billions.
Give me my beef.
So I was going to ask, and this is one of the points that's brought up in the documentary on Netflix called Our Planet, narrated by Sir David Attenborough. But one of the things that we can do to help, reduce our impact and carbon footprint on the planet is to eat less meat. And I know we've talked about this before, Mom and Dad, but you guys don't eat meat anymore, or you do very rarely. I have a couple days a week where I'll go a few meals without meat in there. I'm trying to be a little bit more conscientious about that. But Ben, what is your meat consumption? Is it every day, every meal? Do you have a meal per the week that you don't eat meat?
No, I pretty much eat meat almost daily, almost at every meal.
Carnivore.
All right, we're working overtime to compensate for the rest of the family.
Making up for everybody else's lack of meat eating.
Mm.
I mean, as much as I do love like beef and red meat, I don't eat all that much of it. I don't think I'm trying to remember. At least when I go grocery shopping, I don't really hit up the red meat aisle all that much.
Right.
I usually try and stick honestly to like chicken or turkey and seafood. Okay. It's the majority of what I eat. Occasionally, now and then, I'll feel like I'm, really jonesing for a steak. So then I'll spring and go buy some nice strips or something and do those. But I don't know. For me, even just like red meat is just like, it's more of a hassle, I guess, for me to make. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to like cooking, just because, I work all day, which this is no excuse, but then I get home and it's like 4:00 and I'm tired. I'm like, oh shit, I still got to eat. And so I kind of try and do stuff that's a little bit quicker to cook and prepare. So that way I don't have to spend, an hour in the kitchen and, and all that. And I also try and do it stuff to limit the amount of dishes I have to do as well. The water conservation.
That's how you're
Because-
balancing it out. You know, eat a
Because
little bit
this
more
is
like
how I
white
justify
meat.
this in my head. I'm lazy, but I'm also saving the planet at the same time.
Really? Does that go for the water you let run for 20 minutes in the morning before you even get in the shower?
Look, I have a process, and sometimes I need to take a poop before I get in the shower. Okay. Sometimes that poop ends up taking a little bit longer time because I sit on TikTok and wait for the water to warm up.
Oh man.
Anyway, I think what you're driving at, honestly, you know, and we probably need to start wrapping this up before we get too lengthy, is we need to come down to personal choices, and personal choices based on how we want the planet to be. I think for me, having traveled the world literally and seen so many different cultures, this country is the most wasteful, the most selfish country on the face of the planet. And a lot of people in this country just don't care. They want to live for today, and they don't care. And when you talk to them about what are you going to leave for your kids, their answer is normally along the lines of, they'll figure it out. You know, and we don't need to live that way. We need to live more globally in a certain aspects. You know,
very careful to distance yourself.
Yeah,
globalization. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, and I
Russia
think
has entered the chat.
The planet's health is one of those things that we have to be global on.
Right. Yeah, because it affects everyone. Like you can't have one person peeing in the corner of the swimming pool and saying it's fine. Right?
That's why they put the blue dye in there, so we know which it is.
Yeah. But I think by making those conscious choices of, you know, just little things, just start with little things. So, you know, walk or ride to work if you can, take public transport. If you're going grocery shopping, take your own bags, reuse your bags that you have. Yeah, the checkers may not like it, but you know, it's fine. Think about what you're buying and what the packaging of that is. If you're in an area that has bulk food and they've started putting that back in different places again, you know, do your own containers and do that to help reduce waste. You know, think about it. You know, there's a big push for, you know, buying used clothing or reworking what you have. And, you know, if you are so inclined and talented enough to do that, by all means do it. But, you know, look at those different ways that you can do. And if you start small, before you know it, you'll be making, you won't notice a change in your life. So you'll notice that you're missing stuff like the latest iPhone or whatever.
Right.
I mean,
so that planned obsolescence gets you and you have to upgrade.
Yeah, but that's a good 10 years. Like I got a 10 years out of my last phone before I had to do.
If you're with Apple.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're not with Apple.
Well, how do you think Apple became the first $1 trillion company? So all in all, definitely take a look at your life choices, how they impact the planet. Do a little bit of research into green or renewable energy, as it's called now, and see, you know, just how renewable it is, and just, you know, take stock of your life and what you can do to reduce your footprint on the earth. Also, 7.5 to 8 billion humans is way too many people on this fucking planet. Kill them all. No.
Stop having babies.
Yeah.
COVID tried, and then we stopped it.
Yeah, I tried. It wasn't the one. The next one will get us. But yeah,
bring back the plague. Bring back the plague.
But yeah, I think, you know,
overpopulation
is definitely a major factor in all of this. But of course, you're not going to tell somebody you can't have kids, or
China
you
tried.
can only have X amount of kids.
Well, 20 kids is too many. 18 kids is too many.
Look at you, Duggars.
On the scale from China to the Duggars, fall somewhere, you know, less.
I will say 3 is the picked odd numbers.
And on that note, I've been Josh.
I'm Dad.
I don't know if I want to give my name now because the government's listening. FBI agent, if you're here, it wasn't me.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit silly, and I'll add a special sound bite at the end from the first time that we tried to record this, if Ben will ever send that to me. So, see ya. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Joshua?
What?
It
What?
did not go well.
What happened?
Mr. Roboto happened. Your internet is garbage on base.
God damn it. What was the last thing you heard?
That's what we heard.
We really didn't hear anything, Josh.
Pain and suffering.
All right, what the fuck is up? We're doing How Green is Green Energy. We watched a documentary. It's by some dude named Michael Moore. It's called Planet of the Humans. Family discuss, please.
Hello?
Okay.
And
Sweet mother of God.
What?
He's back.
Now my internet went out. Like